Are you ready? I call this March 7th Planning Commission meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. We have one item to consider tonight. There are three previously, but two have been deferred. One by the applicant, that's Z-24-06/PH-24-06-V24-0655 Canton, and also the Unified Development Code has been deferred by staff. I don't believe I can. I'll just bring the microphone close to myself. Can you hear better now?
Yes.
I'll try to speak louder. Before we consider the first item, we have the February 1st, 2024 meeting. I wasn't here. What's the desire of the board?
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February meeting.
I'll make a motion to second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries.
I'm going to abstain since I was not present at that meeting.
Okay. All right. The first item is CLUP-24-01/Z-24-04/V-24-04 Upper Hembraid Truck Empire Communities. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The item before you is a request from Empire Communities. They're requesting a comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning and variance to allow for the construction of 149 single-family detached homes on 19.32 acres. The comprehensive land use plan amendment is from commercial to high-density residential, and then the rezoning is from PSC, Planned Shopping Center, to R8AD, which is dwelling for sale, attached and detached residential. Variances are requested to reduce undisturbed buffers, to reduce lot width, and to increase building and lot coverage. I have the location map on the overhead. This property is located at 1180 Upper Hembury Road. It's just south of the intersection at Upper Hembury Road and Harris Road. And the proposed density for this subdivision would be 7.72 dwelling units per acre. This is the former Harry's Farmers Market property. They used that property until about 2014 before becoming corporate offices and a distribution center for Whole Foods. The existing building on the property is about 145,000 square feet, and there's just under 600 surface parking spots on the property. The applicant is pointing to the geography and the layout as the challenges justifying the requested variance. and the applicant states that the lot width reduction is needed to develop a detached product on this property. So I'll just briefly go over their variances. So there's a variance to reduce the minimum lot width from 50 feet to 31 feet and increase the maximum building and lot coverage, the building coverage, from 40 to 48%, and the impervious area or lot coverage from 60 to 65%. To justify the lot width variance, the applicant did provide an alternative layout showing townhomes developed on this property. So townhomes in this zoning would only require a 30-foot lot width. And so they've demonstrated that they could fit 150 or more townhomes on the development. So therefore, basically they're trying to show that they're not trying to increase density, and the variance is actually allowing for a detached product on the property. As it relates to the impervious coverage variance, the impervious coverage of the property today is nearly 80%. And so the applicant is asking for a small increase from 60 to 65%. It will still be well below the impervious coverage of the property today. And then they are also requesting to reduce the 50-foot undisturbed buffers where the residential property abuts non-residential property. We looked at the surrounding non-residential properties. We saw that there's approximately a 30-foot tree buffer on the property to the west, and there's approximately 50-foot of tree buffer on the property to the south. And we have had buffer variances approved for sale residential developments. Typically, the non-residential property is the one that usually provides the undisturbed buffer. This is the applicant's site plan. So this is the existing entrance to the site off of Upper Hembry Road. So they're utilizing the existing entrance at that intersection. There's 149 single-family detached homes proposed. There is a second curb cut over here. This will be a gated curb cut. It will only be for emergency and fire vehicles and will be gated at all times. The properties around the perimeter, the homes around the perimeter of the property, there are 50 front-loaded homes. The minimum lot size for those homes is about 4,500 square feet, and those will have a minimum lot width of 38 feet. The homes on the interior of the property, those are 99 rear-loaded homes, and those are smaller lots. Those lots are a minimum lot size of 2,000 square feet, and those are the lots with the minimum lot width of 31 feet. The homes around the perimeter of the property will be 2-story, and the homes in the interior are 3-story. Staff encouraged the applicant to provide a buffer. So the property does have some topography and it sits lower than Upper Hembry Road. And right now, the property is fairly open in this general area of Upper Hembry Road. And so we asked, instead of a landscape strip that you would typically have, and that would only be required to be 10-foot wide landscape strip along Upper Hembry, we asked them to fill in the areas with buffer material, so evergreen material, in order to screen the rooftops from Upper Hembry Road. So they are showing a buffer in this area. And then the rest of this is saving trees. So there's a very nice entrance there today with some very nice trees. So these clouded areas are where they intend to save trees, and you can see the cloud does surround the property as well. Not every single tree is necessarily going to be saved. There's some scrub landscaping that's grown up over the years around the perimeter that would need to be removed, but they do propose some tree saves around the perimeter as well as at the front of the property. Each of the homes will have 2 side-by-side parking spaces in a garage, as well as the code-compliant driveway. So there's a total of 596 parking spaces for this development are proposed. Code requires 447, so they are overparked. They have meet the parking requirement, and there are additional 38 guest parking spaces throughout the development. Site plan shows that there is about almost 5 acres of community space throughout the development. It includes about 1.5 acres of improved amenity space, including pickleball courts, dog park, and community center and pool. There are pedestrian improvements throughout the development, and then there are also linear green spaces proposed throughout the development as well. So these homes are actually facing each other, so they're technically a rear-loaded product. These are alleys. Let me just go back to the regular site plan. The applicant actually color-coded the site plan. The blue areas indicate streets, and the pink indicate alleys. Of course, this is a developed site, so there's not a lot of opportunity to save trees except for around the perimeter, and that's where the applicant is showing tree saves. They are also looking to reuse the existing detention pond and enlarge the detention pond. I know that I had a couple questions about, well, if you're going to have less impervious on the property than you have today, why do they need to increase the size of the detention pond? Of course, rules have changed. Stormwater rules have changed over the years, and that probably has something to do with it, but I believe the applicant is ready to provide you some information in that regard. This is just a close-in on the buffer along Upper Hembury Road. So these are all new plantings here. These are existing tree saves that they're proposing to save up front. And then these are the applicant's proposed renderings. They have a craftsman influence to them. They're brick or stone on the first floor primarily, and then siding, board and batten, and shake on the second and third floors. So I believe this is their 2-story product. And then these are more representative of their 3-story product. So this is what would be in the interior. Of course, looking at the traffic, the applicant provided a trip generation report indicating that the subdivision would generate 119 AM peak hour trips and 149 PM peak hour trips. For comparison, the existing approval on the property for the grocery store, corporate offices, and the accessory warehousing and distribution, that use would actually generate 237 AM peak hour trips and 600 PM peak hour trips. So the residential use here does generate significantly fewer trips. Applicant also provided a traffic impact study. It did have recommendations for improvements at the site driveway. So there are some recommended improvements at the site driveway, and we do have a condition. Those are indicated. There are 3 bullets indicated in the report, and we do have a condition indicating that the applicant would need to comply with those recommendations. Then looking at the review criteria for the comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, and variances, we found that, given the current state of retail and abundance of available retail commercial space, we really don't need additional land for commercial use. We found that the applicant's proposal is supported by several policies in the comprehensive plan, housing policies, as well as land use policies. As I just noted, the residential development would generate fewer vehicular trips than the commercial use. We also noted in the review of the review criteria that there have been the character of Upper Hembury really transitions from medical offices as you move from east to west to more residential feel, and it has a residential, the street has a residential character. We also found that there are other similar zoning district used along this corridor or nearby. So there is Bell Smith Regency that is to the east and north. Along Upper Hembury has the same zoning district, R8AD. And then there's another detached subdivision just down Harris, at the end of Harris, at the corner of Harris and Rucker, that also has the same zoning and similar density. And specific to the variances, we do believe that the applicant's alternative plan with the townhome plan shows that the lot width variance is not adding density, and it's allowing for that detached product. The increase to the building and lot coverage would allow for the more smaller cottage home, smaller lot cottage home style that they're proposing within this development. And then the applicant did provide a citizen participation report. They indicated that questions were raised at the community zoning information meeting regarding traffic and impacts to surrounding properties. According to the applicant, they met with some adjacent residential neighbors. I believe they would be the neighbors to the rear of this development. So that would be in Roswell. There is a, I believe it's called Hembury Forest subdivision that abuts the property from here to here. Based on those meetings, the applicant did make some commitments, and we've captured those in the conditions regarding some fencing and screening along that common property line. City staff was contacted by a resident in Bell Smith Regency with some concerns over traffic and density, and we did connect that person with the applicant. It's my understanding the applicant has met with Bell Smith Regency. I don't recall if it was the full HOA board. Applicant could clarify that. But according to the applicant, that meeting went well, and there was some email correspondence that was included in your packet. Then the community zoning information meeting was held on February 14, 2024, and there were no public comments left on the sign-in sheet. With that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request, subject to 22 conditions, and I'll quickly go through those conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition, tying it to the site plan I showed. 2 is the showing the comprehensive land use plan designation as high density residential. 3 is the density. 4 is the minimum lot width per the variance requested. 5 is the maximum building coverage and impervious coverage per the applicant's request, variance request. Condition 6, it ties to the architecture and materials I showed you in the renderings. Condition 7 requires a landscape buffer along Upper Hembury Road in order to screen rooftops as shown on the plan. There were some So back to the buffer here, there were some, in the materials, they were showing some loblolly pines, which we feel don't always provide that evergreen coverage, so we are recommending that those be replaced with cryptomeria, deodar cedar, arbor vitae, and or hollies. Condition 8 is the requirement for addressing the applicant's variance request to reduce the buffers around the perimeter of the property. So it requires a 15-foot planted buffer. So the applicant site plan is already showing a 15-foot planted buffer around this perimeter of the property. And so we've conditioned that. We also increased the buffer along the east side. And then on the south side to about this point, The property in those locations, the property abuts what we originally thought was just professional office, but they're actually flex office warehouse space with loading bays, doors at the back. So we did beef up the buffer there and ask for a 20-foot planted buffer. Condition 9 requires that the project entrance be enhanced with landscape beds, a planted median, and a unique monument or sculpture. And the sculpture would be subject to final approval by a Cultural Arts Commission. Condition 10 addresses the open space and ties it to the open space on the site plan. 11, privacy fences and unfinished wood decks shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. Condition 12 ties the curb cut on the far east corner of the property to fire and emergency access only and requires it to be gated. Condition 13 addresses the internal streetscape, so the requirements for planters and sidewalks and pedestrian lighting, and those are maintained. Maintenance responsibility will be with the HOA. Condition 14 addresses the streetscape along Upper Hembry Road, so there'll be some improvement of planters as well as sidewalk improvements along Upper Hembry Road. Condition 15 addresses the landscape strips along the new interior roads to this development. 16 requires pedestrian amenities, including sidewalks, lighting, and benches throughout the development and in amenity areas. Condition 17 ties this tree saves shown in the clouded areas. Condition 18 requires the developer to implement the recommendations of the traffic study, so the improvements at this intersection. 19 requires the stormwater facility on the south side of the property to be appropriately screened. Condition 20 and 21 deal with agreements that the developer has made with adjacent neighbors. 20 says, per mutual agreement, developer shall retain existing 12-foot tall privacy fence abutting Hembry Forest subdivision during demolition of the existing building on the subject site. So I guess there's a 12-foot fence that is existing here. The neighbor asked that that be maintained while the structure is being demolished. And then after that, condition 21 says, per mutual agreement, developer shall install an 8-foot tall wooden privacy fence on applicant's property, where adjoining the southern property line is shown on the buffer exhibit, and that's referencing this exhibit that was prepared by the applicant. Applicant shall install a staggered double row of evergreen trees on applicant's property adjoining the privacy fence. And condition number 22 limits the number of homes that can be rented to no more than 10%. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael. There are comments we received late from the applicant number 8, 14, 15, and 17. I assume you have taken a look at them.
Yes.
Do you have an opinion about the applicant's revisions to the conditions?
Yes. Staff is supportive of the applicant's requested changes to conditions number 14 and 15. We have not come to terms on their changes to condition 8 and 17. Our preference is, if the board recommends approval of this item this evening, that condition 8 and 17 stay as staff is recommended. And I believe that the applicant should be able to do some additional work. They need to look at some grading before they can agree to the language that is proposed by staff, but I think that they could get there.
All right, does the board have questions for Michael?
Hi, Michael. I've got a couple for you. Given the comparatively narrow widths of these lots, will there be side setbacks?
I didn't hear that last part. The
Will there
side
be
setback?
side setbacks between the properties?
Yes. Bear with me 1 second. So within this zoning district, there's not a variance is not requested, and this zoning district requires 5-foot side setbacks.
5 foot. Okay.
So given two properties would come together, you would have 10-foot separation between structures.
Okay, in which there can be no structures or any obstructions placed without approval.
It would be vertical structures would be subject to that 5-foot setback.
In condition 11, I see reference to privacy fences.
Mm-hmm.
Where would those be?
So that's just a general condition
Okay.
that we put in. The applicant hasn't discussed installing any privacy fences other than the fence that they've agreed to do for the neighbors.
Okay. Also, when I look at condition 13 and then at condition 16, both of which discuss pedestrian sidewalks in particular, condition 13 says sidewalks are not required in the alleys.
Correct.
So if I look at the layout of the, if you could put that up there, the interior lots that are accessible only from the alleys? Right. But you're saying they face each other. But what is the pedestrian access to these properties?
So for example, this pink represents an alley.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the rear of the home, facing the garage will be here.
No
And the front
sidewalks
of the
there?
home are facing this green space, and there's sidewalk down the center.
Oh, that's what that's indicating.
Yes.
I thought that was just a property line. Okay.
And that's the condition everywhere where the homes are facing each other.
Got it.
There's a green space with a center sidewalk.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Mhm.
Oh, one last question, I'm sorry. On condition 21, I see reference to an 8-foot tall wooden privacy fence. Does that not require a variance?
Typically, we do limit on residential developments to no more than six feet. In this case, there's an existing 12-foot fence, and so they're not increasing the nonconformity that exists today. So, and this is part of an agreement to address some concerns from the neighbors to the back. So I don't think that we would require a variance in that case.
Thank you.
If you can go back to the lot use, what is to the south? Sorry, the south, and the north, and the east of the property. What type uses are there?
Yeah, this would be a good map, Chairman, to look at. So the property to the south and east is City of Roswell. Let me get my pen here. So this portion of the property abuts a residential subdivision in City of Roswell, Hembry Forest. This here, as well as here on the south and east, those are flex office warehouse space. The properties across Upper Hembry from the development represent some professional office. Spirit of God Church was approved on this property. I don't believe they've developed yet. This is a residential property, an R15 property right here. And then the property over to the west of this development, most of it is separated by a public street, Point Place. These are a mix of professional and medical offices.
And then on the other side is the residential. So there is no residential between the property all the way to the junction between Hembry and Main Street. I'm looking at the area that I have in front of me. Did you hear the question? no residential between the property and the junction between Main Street or Roswell Road and Hembury.
Main Street.
05970553 all the way to the intersection to my right.
I'm not aware, I believe this is all non-residential development all the way to Alpharetta Highway in Roswell. I'm not intimately familiar with these properties because they are in Roswell, but I'm fairly certain that these are all non-residential properties here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You had a question?
Michael, I had a question about the stormwater drainage. Did you see that, say that is being enlarged now?
Yes. So the applicant there's an existing detention pond here at the rear of the existing building, and they are proposing to enlarge the size of that detention pond.
Any further questions? All right, we're going to turn this over to the applicant to make a presentation. Yes, we can.
Is this good? Awesome. Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. So we're excited about the project tonight, and it's always hard to follow Michael and Kathy because they're the best in the business at explaining everything. So we want to run through any different things that we're seeing to it, so you can understand our approach and how we came about looking at this. So starting with the aerial, you can see it's a really unique site. As he mentioned, Whole Foods went out in 2017. Before that was 2014 when Harry's, and it's been sitting there. Seems like at random times I've driven by it, and you basically have kind of that visual on the front. And so as we walk through a lot of the planning that we've done on this, when you drive by that site, you'll notice it has a lot of really nice, basically pines along that frontage, and then it kind of gets sparse along some steep areas. And we're really going to talk about that and what we've done to try to preserve that, and it's one of the ways that we approach the plan as it is. You can also see the surrounding areas. And to kind of just recap, so we were actually able to meet with one of the neighbors here. Jeannie, she's here tonight, and actually stand in the yard. So we were able to get a really good perspective of not only inside the site of how it feels, but also externally, and then what we should do as part of our conditions that we're looking at here. This is the survey that we had done, and this really kind of shows you guys in terms of the impervious area. So the parking lot alone, the 595 spaces, is basically 5.25 acres of the site that it makes up, and then you have the building. And so obviously there's a lot of demolition that would have to be done as part of this. So when you're seeing some of the conditions, like that condition about the 12-foot fence remaining through demolition, that's for the protection of those homes behind. And we were able to see that, and we're able to see through the fence so we could understand how that made sense. And you can actually see it. Are you able to see the little hand? Okay, perfect. On the screen, you can actually see it in this area, and these are where the residents were down here coming on. And this is just a bigger version of what you're seeing here with Hembury in this location. This is our master site plan that you guys are looking at, and what we tried to do is really try to use some different colors to show. So there's not just one type of product on here, or even just two types of products. You know, we have alley-fed product as to where we're really fronting on a green space, and Empire does a really amazing job at really creating community and really embracing the green spaces. If you guys have ever been over to Thompson community that they did over there, they basically have a lot of green space that you can feel, and they make it very walkable. That's why we try to turn all these areas inward so that we have essentially all this sense of arrival when you're home and community. When you come in, basically the frontage, what we wanted to do was to really try to leave those trees. So when you're looking at the site, this entire group of trees here, we left alone. And the way we're able to do that is we gave the road a little bit of a diet when you come in. It's basically a 2-lane, larger, more kind of industrial feeling road. So we gave it a lane diet here down to more of a one-way, making sure the fire department can get in there. But we wanted to leave this island. There's also trees inside the island as well, and then trees on this side. It also worked out really well because these are pickleball courts that sit in the corner, and we have different amenities. I'll walk through the plan for you guys and show, but what that does is that sets those amenities down below the road. And us leaving this entrance it basically dives down. So once you're down here in front of the homes, you are set down below Hembry. So it's really nice. It actually creates a little bit of a noise buffer. And that's why those trees in the front and leaving this front road in place really was able to take advantage of what's there today and then reuse it for what we're looking at in the future. Because really the pop of the place is along the stretch and throughout. So when you come into the community, this is a really long, vast amenity that runs all the way through here. This is almost 250 feet. Kind of give you an idea, getting close to a football field there. And then at the end of it, you have the amenity center, you have the pool, and really this is a big part of what Empire tries to do in their communities is create really great amenity areas so that the livability is outside and focused on those. As you come down, like I mentioned, the colors, there's 5 different types of products on here. You have a front load product, 2 different types of those. And then on the rear loaded product, you have 2 different types of those as well. Actually, I think 3 of those facing the amenity here and then in the small alleys and then back here as well. The guest parking, we put in some different strategic places as well as we really wanted to have this street feel like that main street. So that is all on-street parallel parking with the tree bulbs that pop out. And we've had a lot of talks about with the arborist, with David, and going through exactly how those feel and what we can accomplish from this. We are looking through here. We've done a lot of our homework with Fulton County, with the arborist, and making sure that we can fit the landscaping as well as the utilities that we need to on this. And I've got some slides to walk through how that works for you guys. But as you come further into the community, this would be a dog park that we're looking at having kind of centralized here, and then all through here would be green space. I know there was a question, so I wanted to, while we have it up on the screen, it's very visible about the stormwater management. So the stormwater pond, it's not that we're wanting to make it larger. With the new runoff reduction, the new stormwater standards coming up, basically we'll have smaller little green infrastructure areas throughout the community. But when it comes to the pond, even if it's almost all impervious today, we have to look at it as if it's essentially a wooded site. So when we go through the calculations, we have to take it back to more of a pre-developed site. So we know with the current standards that pond is going to get larger because it was developed at a time when those standards were not quite as high. And so that is the reason, but we're going to do a really good job of landscaping and fencing and make sure that it's not something that just sits in a hole. It's something where we can landscape around it and make it feel purposeful. As you run through the different parts of the site through here, these are all the front loads, like you mentioned, along the perimeter, and then internal, these are all the alleys. But we also turned these, we basically started street side back in. Now, when you're here, this road, we kept existing with these trees, but we wanted to make sure this row was facing outward. So this is going to have those great front porches, as you can see. They would overlook the amenity here and overlook this green. And then we started the alleys going back through the project. And that was how we basically designed it from the inside of what the site was giving us back to the outside of it. And you can actually see from the designs here. And I know it's a little hard to see, but each one of these alleys, they actually have that sidewalk and plantings, and really want to embrace those zones because those are a really wide landscape area, and so we're going to make sure those have paid particular choice to that so you can really see it. Michael showed you this slide as well. Just to kind of go back over this, everything here, these are our primary roads, and then here we looked at those more. They are, they're roads wide enough for the fire department, but they do act as alleys. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we are providing sidewalks through all the places that it made sense. We just didn't want to have them on the backside where there wasn't door access coming through. Working with Eric, with Kimley, we were able to produce some really cool plans to demonstrate the landscaping. And we had several meetings with David and going back and forth about, we needed to get in essentially, overstory. We need to have shrubs. We need to have a lot of the different type of trees that are required per lot as well as along the street. And we were able to do that. We worked with him. We were able to spread some things apart and look at things by lot basis. And you can kind of see this landscaping up on the front. And so what we did is we really were trying to go for a uniform look. So if you go out there today and you're pulling out, there's actually an acceleration lane. And that's not what DOT does anymore. You don't need acceleration lanes. They became a problem because people couldn't see when they were trying to accelerate. And so that would go away. And what it's enabling us to do is the condition is a 2-foot strip, a 6-foot sidewalk, and then trees behind it. So in that 2-foot strip, we're able to plant shrubs within it all the way down and then have the sidewalk zone. So the sidewalk zone is separated from the drive aisle, and then we have the trees behind it. And we're able to demonstrate that with our saved trees here as well as all the new plantings along here. And then these are some blow-ups that we created so you guys can get a feel for how this looks. These are all the different type of larger trees through here as well as all the different type of shrubs and smaller plantings that would go on within a lot. And we wanted to put a few of these in here because they were part of our submittal package, but they weren't just part of our package. This is an alley lot and this is a front load lot, but they weren't just part of demonstrating that we're going to really jazz up the landscaping, which we will. They're part of proving that even with the roads, the way we've been able to design them, even with the lots, that we can actually still meet the ordinance on a single family lot with the arborist the way we need to with the overstory and smaller trees. We also have really good screening around the pickleball, and the reason we have the pickleball further up, we have that road and the office, professional office beside us, and it's up near the road. It is totally screened, but that would keep the pickleball from being back by the residences in the south part of the site, because pickleball is not the quietest game in town. It's really fun, but it's not the quietest, so we wanted to make sure we understood that we were thinking about that as well. And this shows the graphic of what I was talking about, preserving those trees, coming down, and then really sitting below the road. Just to throw a little bit of color to this, when we met with Jeannie, it was her house, I believe this one here. So that existing fence was right along here. And so that's the one that we are preserving today. But then what we're looking at doing is running that essentially that 8-foot fence down to here, picking it up from here all the way down, and then having the screening with the evergreen screening because we realized when we were there that is something we want to be able to provide. These homes, when you're looking at the site plan, this is the only place where we abut the residential in these homes. We push them. Those are the furthest away from the residential portion of that. This is our final zoning plan that we had in that. I showed it just a little bit earlier, getting it together. And then this is probably the thing that really embraces what we're trying to do. This is a watercolor that they have created on every property to show Fernleaf. It's what we're calling the park project. And this really shows when you come in that screening that exists today, the courts on the side, and then that really big green lawn. And then you can see the amenity center, the dog park back here. And then you can start getting glimpses of how those homes will face each other and those green spaces will work from the way it feels. These are kind of zoomed in views. This is that amenity area up front. So you can see you have your front porches so people could be out on the front porch overlooking the amenity, or kids playing outside overlooking the amenity as well. This was the townhome plan where we were just looking at the townhomes on it. And I personally have seen the site actually previously before even Empire worked on it, and it was always proposed to be townhomes, what people were wanting. And so when the idea to come up and let's look at an innovative way to do single-family detached, still being 10 feet apart with really good-looking product type was really cool. And so it was exciting to work on. And then architecturally, what you'll see is, they have project over on Thompson, which is more of a lighter palette, more of a white, light gray. This is looking at a little bit of the darker colors. We think it'll be a really good feel for this portion of the community and a little bit different than what you see on so many of them. And these are just different elevations for the front load and then the rear load overlooking that amenity area that you have through there. And then finally, these are the ones that would be facing Upper Hembry in those locations that are there. And with that, I can take any questions that you guys may have and answer anything that I can go over.
Thank you for your presentation. You are very comprehensive in your presentation. Any questions?
Yes, I actually do have one on number 18. I could not find it, and I just might have missed it. The recommendations for the traffic input study. Michael mentioned there were 3 items. Don't have to go in depth. I just didn't know what they were. I couldn't find, sorry if that's a hard one, or. Oh,
It's
page
in-
5. Okay, thank you.
It is. Oh, do you see it?
I will find it, thank you.
It might be in your staff, okay.
And then the second question I do have, I'll look at that, he said page 5. The second question I have is involving, it was referenced on the drawing as pond, and there was also reference to stormwater retention area. So the goal, it's heavily landscaped, based on your renderings. So it's not a amenity as far as walking around or anything like that. It is truly out of sight, out of mind.
Screening, yeah, it is a stormwater pond, and so there's no spring or anything to keep it, full. And so the way we looked at it was really good landscaping, but also fencing so that, it really didn't set up really well. This, since it's already part of kind of commercial industrial, it sits in the back, kind of out of the way. If it was something where it would have been easier to have a trail that comes over and wraps around, which we've done on some different projects, but this one in particular, it made more sense to screen it and try to make something so it wasn't impacted.
Okay, thank you.
Couple quick questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
When you discuss the dog park,
Yes.
is this an off-leash or only on-leash? In other words, if it's off-leash, you would have to fence it, I think.
Don't know that we really have a preference.
Yeah, I don't know that we've thought through it yet. I think the idea is just to make a really nice dog park, but
Okay, because if it's off-leash, then there's going to be, you're going to probably need to consider fencing, but I would also like to encourage water source where you have dogs walking. So if you have anything like a water fountain or a bottle filler or something like that, I think that's an excellent idea in both green areas. Just a recommendation.
sounds good.
Let's see, I had one other. Oh, I assume then that all of the landscaping you're talking about is going to be maintained by the HOA, right?
Yes, actually, this project is really cool with the way that Empire does these communities. All the landscaping will be taken care of for
Okay.
everybody, just like a townhome community.
And my last question has to do with parking. Realizing that you have more than the required number of parking spaces, I still would have some concerns about guest parking. If, say, for example, someone were to have a, Thanksgiving dinner with lots of visiting family or service trucks, somewhere that doesn't involve street parking, because I have a feeling street parking could be problematic even at a 24-foot width. What are your thoughts about that?
So we had put different parking around this area. We have the driveways here are about 27 feet long. So obviously they have the 2 in it, the 2 in the garage, and then we tried to put more on-street parking here. We also put some here on this end as well. We were thinking when we were exceeding it that we were okay on it, but if you guys have any thoughts, if there's like a location, we don't want to disturb any of the trees up here. That was a big part of it. If we feel like the distribution is really good all through here, if there was one location, over here, they may not have as easy of access. You could probably fit some parallel kind of out in front of these in here. But we felt like the way we had the plan was sufficient, but we can definitely look at that if that's a concern.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question for you, and that is, what is the current pervious versus impervious, and what you're going to have for the pervious versus impervious on this project?
Sure, it's closer to like 90 down to like in the 60s, in the low 60s, 64 point. I think it was like 64.2. I think we requested 65.
Is that because of, now there's that 5.25 acres of asphalt and then the building. So you're keeping the pervious impervious about the same, or going from, did you say from 90
no,
down to
it's closer
65?
to like that upper 80s.
To 65 or
Yes,
below?
yes. So
Okay.
it's lowering quite a bit on it.
Yeah.
It's when you go out there, you can really feel it. They do have some landscape islands, but that's it. That's about it. There's just so many random concrete pads, I guess, for, different things they were using for. But we're definitely reducing a lot.
Any other questions? No further questions at this time. We're going to ask the public if any comments. All in favor, please come forward.
Hello,
Hello, please state your name and address for the record.
I will. I'm Phyllis Jean Goodrich, otherwise known as Jeannie, and his comments. 370 Hembry Forest Circle, Roswell, Georgia.
All right.
Anything else? Okay. I've lived in my house for 43 years. I've been before Alpharetta more than once, primarily because of the development behind me. So the first thing I want to say is I am all in favor of having residential. As you can imagine, Harry's went through several iterations. Whole Foods followed. Vacancy followed. And so I think having a nice development behind me will be beneficial. The bad news is getting there is going to be very onerous for me. I've been told that the demolition of the Harry's building alone will take 4 to 6 weeks, and it's practically in my bedroom. You've seen the pictures, and they are reducing, and they have agreed to leave the existing fence, but there's no buffer to speak of from a sound abatement standpoint, or lights, or anything else. And I have some concerns about the getting there. Not only for me, but for my other neighbors that are nearby. And we've talked about it some. I am worried about safety and security during that time. We have had problems while the property's been vacant of people going back there and doing what they please. So I'm looking to Empire to find a way to help us during their probably year-long plus project before it gets to this beautiful picture that they've presented. I'm sure we will be good neighbors as time goes by. I have a couple comments that I wrote down, and probably not near as formal as what has been presented. One was regarding the dog park, and certainly since it's toward the end of the development that's nearest my house, I would like it to have a fence around it, if need be, to help keep the canine neighbors penned up. I've read a lot of things lately about dog parks, and they are not always favorable. So I guess I'm glad for them they're going to have one, but I'm not sure that there doesn't need to be some further security. The parking, I live in Hembry Forest, and anybody who ever goes through there, and y'all probably don't have a lot of need to go through there, but when I first moved there was very little parking on the street. But we're now faced with parking on both sides of the street in a road that was not meant to be parked on. And it's mostly at night or on weekends, but I have a fear of the emergency vehicles not being able to get through. The developers have told me they don't anticipate a lot of school children in this development, but I didn't hear anything discussing about school buses or anything along that line as far as the traffic going through the neighborhood or the safety of the children between parked cars. So I would hope that there are covenants that would be established for protection of the people in that neighborhood as a resident to protect the children in that neighborhood from having too many cars parked alongside of the road. So I was glad to hear that was brought up, but as I understand it, if it's a public road, anybody can park wherever they want. So anyway, As far as the fence between me and the development, the current fence is 12 feet tall, and I understand that's not a traditional height. 8 feet certainly is a compromise, but I also would want to make sure that both for the residents looking over into my yard, as well as vice versa, my yard into their yard, that there be enough fence from the lay of the land to keep us some separation. And we discussed, and I think I can see it in the picture, that they're going to put plantings on both sides of the fence. And I don't know if the fence is right on the property line or just inside or whatever. I couldn't tell from the picture that they described. I'm glad they are willing to put one up. So I would ask you if that could be clarified. Because I need some reassurance. I'm losing a good portion of my yard that was really the buffer previously to the development. So there was also a discussion when they were at my home about identifying trees in the current buffer area that would need to be preserved, and I don't know if they've done that assessment yet to determine if there's any specimen trees that need to be preserved or not, and how that would affect their landscaping and placement of buildings, etc. Also to the, let's see, you said east-west. The west of the property, I know they mentioned medical buildings or offices. It's my understanding that there is a drug rehab residential center just to the back left corner, because I can see the building through my neighbor's yard, and I don't know if they have weighed in on this. Yes, there's a road separating them to some extent, but again, for both sides of the project, I just think there should be some acknowledgement and some discussion about having that right next to this new development, and not only for the long term, but for the term during the construction, because they would be very exposed to the construction and the demolition, like I am. I'm looking for donations for a trip for the month that they do the demolition, if any of y'all would like to donate, so that I can leave the area. So when Harry's and then subsequently Whole Foods were there were restrictions because they were commercial, and maybe Alpharetta felt sorry for us in Roswell that it was allowed to come up so close to our homes. And they put in several things in place to give us some protection, which I will be eternally grateful. But one thing that I do request, they were restricted as to when trucks and heavy equipment and loud noises, etc., could be coming into the property at night and in the early morning. So I don't know with Alpharetta's rules if any consideration would be given to that so that I could have some peace of mind. And in my older age, as I've now retired and a senior citizen, I would like to have some peace in my yard and in my bedroom at night, and not just hear constant thrum of construction. So I would ask for some clarification. The planners might be able to help me with that. But I would request, as Alpharetta did before, some protection for those of us who are your neighbors and have been long-term neighbors and good neighbors, that we be protected from anything that would be so disruptive in our life. I've watched a construction site there near 400 on Haynes Bridge that seems like it has taken forever. And if it takes forever like that one did, I don't know what I'll do. But anyway, I'm not planning to leave. I've been there 43 years. I'd like to be there till I die, but I don't want to die a crazy woman. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments. You did very well in your presentation. I hope the applicant has been taking notes to respond to her comments. Anyone else in favor?
Hello, my name is Ashton Austin. My wife owns a practice in the
Your address, please.
11775 Point Place. So my wife owns a practice, professional practice to the west of where the development is along Upper Hembry. We are, in favor of some quality development to happen in this area. A big blank canvas is not really good for business, but a couple of our concerns would be that the development, or that the intersection at Harris and Upper Hembry, even now, can be a little funky. Doesn't really accommodate everybody really well. And so while I know that this site is currently zoned for commercial, I mean, it was zoned back in, from what I understand, the 80s. So I think that, and I haven't had a chance to look at any of the transportation investigation or anything like that, but I'd like to make sure that as a part of this project that we're making sure that this intersection is able to accommodate all this new traffic, because we do have a lot of new professional practices that have been built along Upper Hembry that probably weren't in consideration when the zoning was taking place prior. So I'd like to make sure that that gets taken care of. And then I also want to kind of reiterate some of what Ms. Jeannie was talking about with the on-street parking. We don't have much on-street parking along Point Place. I'd hate to see, every time, I used to live in the city of Atlanta, and it was always kind of like when people filled up the streets, everybody started filling over to the next street, and Point Place is that next street, and I don't really feel like it's a good plan to make sure that we don't have areas for people to park inside this development rather than spilling over into other neighboring developments, because there's not enough parking for people to come visit for Thanksgiving and everything like that. So that's one of my concerns, just to make sure. I don't know if that's a roadway width concern, more parallel parking, wider driveways, a situation like that. But maybe that's something we can address at this point. And then I guess overall, when it comes down to zoning, I always like to see, I do work in the civil engineering industry, and have dabbled a little bit in zoning, and it's always good to see, zoning kind of morph rather than bouncing back and forth. And I kind of see something where we're going from, flex/commercial to residential, back to professional/commercial, and then back to residential is not always good for quality growth in an area. And so I don't know, I'm not trying to upset anybody's rhythm with this development and everything. I know there's been a lot of work that's taking place with all this, but mixed use can be a really good buffer when it comes to going from commercial to residential, putting a little mixed use in there. So it's a little disappointing to see that there's no mixed use, no commercial, no restaurants or shopping or anything like that. So if that's a consideration that can be placed in everybody's mind, maybe it's something we can consider. But that's what I got. So
Thank you for your comment.
thanks a lot, guys.
Anyone else in favor? Please come forward.
Saul Watson. I'm here with my wife Kyle. We've lived on Birch Hollow for 30 years and have watched the various iterations.
Did you state your name and address?
Yeah,
for the record?
we've watched the various, we've lived here for 30 years off of Birch Hollow and have watched various iterations of Harry's.
We need
And
your name and address.
Yeah, 215 Birch Hollow Place. And it's Roswell, though we're in Alpharetta, so it's a Roswell address. But we're excited about this plan. We need more housing. We don't need more commercial in the city. We don't really need any more office at this point. So I think it's the best thing that can happen with this property, given its current state and the need for housing. So very excited about it, and it looks like a quality development. I do sympathize with the concerns about the construction. It is a big inconvenience, but there's not much you can do if you want to improve something. You can't just leave a building that's there deteriorating. So we're excited.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, anyone in opposition? No one in opposition. I'll ask the applicant if you can come forward for rebuttal and respond to the comments that were made.
Sounds good. So kind of running down through a list of the comments. So the intersection, Harris Upper Hembry, so the things that the traffic study identified that we are doing as part of this, I think will make a big difference, is there are signal timing issues there. And so they were able to identify those in the traffic study, and we're going to make those changes to the signal. And so when you're looking at them, I think that's probably what they're feeling, because we noticed it too. And so in terms of the intersection, that will be fixed. There was a question about mixed use. So when we first looked at this, and a lot of different people have looked at it from a mixed use standpoint, what just kind of throws out the mixed use is the site immediately drops, and it sits about, literally probably about 18 feet below the road, 16 feet. And so, retail and something is just it won't survive. It has to have visibility and sit down. And that's what kind of takes the site out, the fact that it's really steeper when you go on this end over here. It would need another entrance. And then this is really better suited for a fire entrance because it comes down into the property that way. And so it's the topography that really throws out the mixed use. And so that's why we're looking at the high quality residential for it running through there. As far as the guest parking, like I said, every house has 4, and then we have the additional. We will definitely look on this stretch where you mentioned it was a little bit light on this kind of area. We could even look in this area and see maybe if there's others we could squeeze in. So we'll take that into, we'll take that note and look at it again. But we feel like, with what we provide with the driveways and everything and the way we have the plan set up, that we'll have parking handled, but we'll definitely look at it as part of the comments that were brought up. Jeannie's, her concerns are our concerns. The biggest thing with that, with the demolition, the ugly part of the development, is, we immediately were like, let's keep that giant, it's about a 12, I'm thinking when I walked up to it, it might even be 13-foot tall fence that's there. And so as part of what we're looking at doing, the best thing is she has Kevin's cell phone, and Kevin will be managing that construction part of it. And so, we want to do the right thing as well. We realize it's not the funnest thing, to be able to do. And so hopefully being able to acknowledge when it's going to happen, leaving that fence up, will provide that major screening, coming in. One answer I probably need either Michael or Kathy to help me with is I don't know the time. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so construction activity is limited Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and no construction or demolition activity on Sundays.
And what is the schedule for, this is an applicant question. The schedule of construction, when do you start, when do you finish approximately?
So starting, I think, demolition.
Yeah, so currently, Kevin Norton with Empire Communities. So currently, demolition we're scheduled to close on the property by the end of the year. Demolition would start early 2025. Horizontal development should take most of the year in 2025, and we would start going vertical in 26.
It's a site work.
So, yes. Okay. So we expect our first home closing to be probably the middle of 2026. That'll take us probably through, based on our current pace, probably through 2029.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing we looked at, as far as the fence, the way we thought for the best screening, anytime you can bring a fence closer and the property sits, like when we were able to stand in her backyard and look at the property, it kind of rises up, toward that fence some. And so the way we have it planned right now is we're looking at having the fence on the property line and then being able to plant on each side. So some plantings on her side with the private agreement, and then also on the other side. And so just to answer that question, because that gives, the closer the plantings are, the better. The further you put them away, the more your eye can continue on that trajectory. And so that was the reason we brought that fence all the way over for the proposed fence at the end, after we're actually doing construction for there. The other item was brought up about safety and security. What we basically talked about with Kevin was that she has her number, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that the site is secured. We have to go in there. We have to put up all the fencing for demolition. And then as soon as that's after that, the very first thing that will go in, as you guys know, David will have the tree fence go up, and then also the silt fences go up before we do anything. And so there'll be deterrents to have any type of spillover from there. So we're not expecting to have any of that, but we can make sure we're in constant communication as we run through everything from that. That was everything I wrote down. The other thing we talked about is we would do a fence along the dog park. It would be about a 4-foot fence as part of the dog park in there. So we hear that and understand that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you covered all the comments, unless, well, I do have a couple of questions about the two conditions that staff mentioned they're not in agreement. If you can explain your rationale on
number 8 and 17.
And 17, yes.
So on 8 and 17, what we were really just trying to do, we've done a lot of different projects in the city, and we know sometimes as we're going through the tree review that depending on how it's worded, we want to make sure we had some flexibility. And so as we were going through it, there's some parts on that east side where it's really flat, and then it gets all of a sudden just steep. It's kind of odd the way the land sets up. And so we were trying to use the word feasible, and we're not compromising lot quality where it kind of shoves in. So we were just trying to get a little more flexibility instead of using the word possible.
And this is something I was going to ask Michael regarding the staff language, possible and feasible. I mean, anything is possible. I do like the applicant language. If you can explain to us what your concern was with their language, specifically on number 8. Well, we are dealing with that one, then we'll come back to 17.
Yeah, just on condition number 8, the applicants requested changes. I just felt like there was no certainty for the city that there would actually be tree saves within those buffer areas. So I just wasn't comfortable with the applicant's language yet. Upon discussing it with the applicant, it sounded like they just hadn't really got into the grading, which is typical going through the public hearing, that they've not done a grading plan yet. So they have some uncertainty, and they needed to do a little bit more homework in order to tighten up this language. But the way it's worded right now, feasible and where lot quality is not compromised, I'm not really sure what that means.
Okay. Can you explain that, please? Maybe the other board members understand it. I'm a little behind on that. And where lot quality is not compromised, what does that mean?
So what we were saying is, let me try to go to something so it might be easier to see it. There's places along here where there's some pipes coming through. There's definitely places where it's obvious, it's fairly flat, easy to save. Some other places here, when you get down like in this area, it gets all of a sudden there's like a big drop off. And we were saying there's also some scrubby places. So there's places where grading it and installing new landscaping would just look better than what's there today. And so we were really just trying to use the word feasible, just thinking that described, we're going to have, maybe it should say our best efforts to save, but where feasible and will look improved, then then, we would like the ability to, to make sure we can do that.
Just work with staff between now and council to perfect that language. And at the moment, I'm inclined to just leave staff language as is and have you walk through that with them, so
Yeah,
they are comfortable.
Yeah, we're conceptually fine, fine with it, and that's why we can leave it like it is, and we're going to continue to work with them over the next month for sure.
Okay, and 17?
Same
Same
is
thing.
really along the same thread. We're okay
Okay.
with just leaving it and working through that.
All right. You had a
I
question?
do have one question. On the lot plan that we have, there was square footage of the lot size, but not the actual units. Did you have an approximate?
Sure.
For the front-loaded, just square feet, approximate's fine?
Sure. Overall, everything is, we have the smallest unit you have is 1,800, and it goes up to 2,600 on the property. And we're going to be in that 6s and 7s.
That's what the next question was.
And there are 5 types of product here.
Yes, and it'll be really, really nice product inside out.
And the price point, I think I saw that.
600 and
600.
700s.
That's the smallest one, is 600.
It is, and we're really trying to, like I said, get that down. So it's Alpharetta's gotten really expensive, and so this is a very, a competitive way to be able to have that good price.
Material costs have gone up, so has labor. All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman? A quick comment. I believe I read that all of the interior streets are going to be private and therefore maintained and operated by the community's HOA.
That's
That would
correct.
say then that public safety would have no jurisdiction for managing any on-street parking that may happen. I don't know if you're going to have any fire lanes designated either along any of the internal streets. So that would put it on your HOA to establish a covenant about on-street parking and also to enforce it, which I can tell you can be cumbersome. So that's just a note for your planning going forward. Also, I am not certain, and I don't know if staff knows the answer, or whether there's any code requirements for the height of a fence if you're going to have an off-leash dog area. Might want to check into that. I think
I
that's
thought
going to
it
be
was
important.
4, but I don't know if y'all have that where it's in.
I think that's easily cleared.
We don't have a minimum height of
Okay.
a fence as it relates to fencing off a dog park or anything like that, but the maximum of new fencing in a residential development, maximum height would be 6 feet.
Okay, thank you.
mean-
But having some experience in our community with a dog run area, we had to make sure that the fencing was of sufficient height because there's a lot of dogs who can easily clear 4 feet.
I got you. And probably the best way I could tell you is, the amount of money they're putting in to make this a really amazing community with the amenities, I'm sure their marketing will get a hold of it and make it what it needs to be and think about it for
The
sure.
comment was for your
Absolutely.
planning
Thank you so
purposes.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm going to turn this over to the board for discussion and or emotion. I haven't had much discussion to my left. So
Mr. Chairman,
Stenson and Perkins.
Mr. Chairman, also staff, was the construction times that you spoke of, Michael, is that entered into the record?
It's
It's part of the code of ordinances.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a comment. Driving to property and seeing it earlier today brought back many memories of taking my kids shopping at Harry's. I used to love that store. So, I forgot in putting in the lens of housing, forgot that whole big dip, and I forgot how wooded it was. So going there and actually seeing it was like, oh, now I understand the landscape plan. I do think it is a good use of that property. I think it's high quality from what we can from what we can see on the plans. And I think you did do a good job with the buffering and the interior planning and the alleys and things like that. I know we meet code on guest parking, but if you see any development in the city it's not enough, and it's overflow everywhere, so I hope you will just take a look at that in the next month. But I think it looks very promising.
I do echo your comments, Madam Vice Chair. I'm always skeptical when we are amending the comprehensive land use plan, but there are cases where an amendment is necessary, and we have talked about those cases previously where we don't live in a perfect world, and there are times when we miss things, and to have somebody willing to take advantage of an opportunity like this and put a product that I believe is very good for this particular area is welcome in our city. So as much as we sometimes hesitate to make amendments to the comprehensive land use plan, it is necessary because a plan is just that, a plan. And there are areas where we have to go back and make some revisions. The one thing I would caution the applicants, I believe you have been very accommodating, very reasonable, willing to work with staff, the neighbors, is to continue to do the same. As you know, construction can be very disruptive to the neighbors, and especially when it's a long time construction. Safety is important, noise is important, and being diligent in making sure that you're good neighbors is important. I see every indication that you are and are trying to be, so I am in full support of this application.
I'll go ahead and just add to that. I want to thank Empire Communities for your continued investment in our community. I think this is a great redevelopment plan for an obsolete commercial space, and I think it's much, much better than the alternative that it's currently zoned for. One of the members of the public said, we don't need more commercial. We don't need another strip center along there. I think this is really going to enhance the area. I think it's a really good quality product, the craftsman style, the green space, the amenities, having pickleball courts, the dog park. I think it's fantastic. And then similar to what the chairman noted, I really like how you've been a good neighbor as far as keeping existing fences, adding fences, giving Jeannie the phone number for the construction manager. We don't see that too often. So thank you again to Empire for that as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I wouldn't, as the newest member here, recently transferred over from Parks and Recreation, I would also like to add my appreciation for the pickleball courts and the green space. I commute Harris to Upper Hembry 2 times a day back and forth from work, and I do want to echo the appreciation for seeing something positive done with this property. I think it's going to be potentially a tremendous addition to our city, and I want to thank everyone who's spoken tonight, both from the company and the community, to welcome our Roswell neighbors. Thank you for coming and showing interest, and would just like to voice my support for the project.
All right, somebody has to make a motion. Or,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve CLUP 24-01/Z-24-04/V-24-04 Upper Hembry Track Empire Communities. As presented by staff and on condition number 14, with the approval of staff, we'll take the markups that were provided. Do I need to read them, Michael?
no.
Okay, just checking. As well as the markups and approve number 15.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion is passes unanimously. It goes before council on March 25th. And as I mentioned before, if you can continue work with staff regarding the other 2 before you go to council, it will make it easier for council. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next meeting, which is the 2nd Thursday of April. You could have done that.
That was different.